You're listening to Not So Live from Asteroid G. I'm Mike Finkelstein. With me in the booth, as always, is
your buddy Mike the Horror Guy talking video games today.
not horror games. Although at some point I do actually want to talk with you about, if I can get a group together to play it, the Friday the 13th game that's actually going to get delisted soon. That's sad, and I should have mentioned this in our previous podcast. But
I played the original one for the Nintendo. I didn't know there was another one coming out.
yeah, there was one from a couple or 3 years ago, I think. Maybe it's 2015. It's been around for a while. But it was an asymmetrical one where one person plays as Jason and the rest of them run away as camp counselors and try and survive him or kill him or something. I don't know.
Oh, that sounds like it could be fun. Yeah.
We'll talk about it in video game chat at some point. But this week we're not talking Friday the 13th. We're actually not talking horror at all, despite what we were just discussing. We're going to be talking Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. We previewed this when the trailer was out and we were hyped for it. Now that the game is out, I'm interested to get your thoughts because I certainly do have thoughts, but I will let you go first.
All right, so the game's been out for about a month now, a little over 3 weeks, and I've probably sunk, I think, about 120 hours or so into it so far.
Surface, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I've done nothing. I'm that's a lot. I got almost 100 shrines, 100 light roots, 100 Koroks. I've been doing stuff. Yeah. I've done some plot and whatnot. I got my sages and all that good stuff, but not all of them apparently. There's another one out there I gotta find. But the game, I still hesitate to say if it's better than Breath of the Wild just yet. Yeah. We'll see how I feel when the story concludes and how this kind of ends and whatnot. But the gameplay is so similar to Breath of the Wild and whatnot with some new mechanics as well. The universe and the engine are pretty much the same, but there's definitely some new mechanics in there that you can play around with. The game's a lot of fun. It's holding my attention. There's something to do. I like grinding, so I don't mind having to grind my money, grind my upgrades, grind my gear. I'm good with that. And the game is really nice looking for what it is. I wish it had a stronger platform, like a Microsoft Xbox or a PS5 engine to kind of run the game and make it look a little more crisp, because it has that Nintendo cartoonish look to it in a way with the Switch, because that's all it can do. Yeah, but the game it's incredible. Don't get me wrong. The game's incredible, and the story's quite good, and I'm anxious to see how it goes at the end. To me, Breath of the Wild is still better, but this is very close so far.
So that's kind of where I'm sitting as well, and I think that's my quote unquote issue with the game, is that it's very, very similar to Breath of the Wild. Now, the introductory area is practically a carbon copy of what it is. You go to 4 shrines, you get new powers, you go off and do stuff, lather, rinse, repeat from Breath of the Wild, you do that. And then you get dropped into the world and can just kind of go anywhere. Once you get your paraglider, you're basically playing the same game. To a point. The key differences are the powers are slightly different, and there's more of the world to explore because you have an upper map of floating islands, which isn't as big as the normal one in sheer landmass. And then you have the underworld full of the darkness that you can explore as well. And the thing for me is one, I spent a lot of time in Breath of the Wild collecting everything. I've done that.
Yeah.
Once. So I'm running in this game. I'm sitting there going, what's the bare minimum I can do where I can feel like I've gotten through the game without having to do everything all over again? It's not a different enough game for me to feel like I need to do everything. When I first started, I'm like, I'm going to do everything again. And then I started playing. I'm sitting there going, God damn it, I've done this already. I've done this. I might get up to where you're at, 80 and 100 shrines. I might do enough of the light routes to be able to explore the underworld. But I think at that point, I'm going to finish the story and get out.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, because it's interesting. It's interesting. It's fun. If you haven't played Breath of the Wild before, maybe this game is better. And here's the other issue I have with it. There's so much. Too much.
It's a lot. It's a lot, right? It's a
lot.
There was a fear when this was coming out that this was going to be like a $70 DLC for Breath of the Wild. Is it worth paying? It is not by any means. No. There's a whole lot of stuff in here, and there's a whole lot of side questing and a whole lot more Koroks, and it's a lot of the same grind, to your point. But the game's good so far. I think they improved some of the issues with the first one. They took some of the more simple glitches out most recently in one of the patches, which I was kind of bummed with. I'm not an item duping kind of guy. I'd rather just collect my stuff. But I was kind of bummed they took out a glitch for food, because inventory space is always at a premium in a lot of these games, and you can only carry so many meals
Yeah.
even though a lot of the same ones don't stack, and that bothers me. So there was a glitch that allowed you to stack meals, which would have been great, that you
Oh, that
cannot
would have
do
been nice.
anymore,
Yeah.
which would have been very nice.
Mm-hmm.
But they took that out and patched it, so kind of a bummer. But I mean, overall, the game is very solid. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to explore. They took some old and made some new with like the great fairies and the way you kind of work them around this time, and but a lot of the same characters are back, which I think is pretty cool. To see Beetle at every stable, around, and getting to see Purra again, and then some of the new ones, and Impa and her balloon flying around, looking at the geoglyphs and whatnot. The story's solid. I'm interested to see how it ends, like I said, but the game itself is vast
It is.
and it's can be rather overwhelming, I think, to somebody that maybe hasn't played a game like this before.
The parts of the game I really liked are the parts that are new.
Hmm.
There was one thing where I was going to a shrine. I saw the shrine. I then eventually managed to navigate my way over to it. It's this shrine floating on top or sitting on top of this floating cube in the sky because there's a lot of floating shit in the sky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and when I navigated, I got in there, and the thing was like, "Oh, you can't do this one yet. You need to go to the labyrinth below here to unlock this labyrinth before you can do the thing here." I'm like, "Oh." So
Ah.
I went and did that labyrinth, which was fun. It was interesting,
Mhm.
like getting in there and then finding my way through. And there was this a whole quest about like this doctor was exploring the labyrinth, but they got lost, so they started leaving like not korok nuts, but like chestnuts or something, as
Hmm.
a trail. So if you know what you were doing, you follow the trail. But then you could like go off the beaten path and come back to it, and like it tested your ability to scale certain things because there's some of the blight throughout the labyrinth and stuff. It's fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then once I did that, then I unlocked the upper labyrinth, which was this weird, like perpetually floating, like labyrinth where you're constantly on your glider trying to light some shrines inside or some control switches inside of it. And that was its own challenge, and it was different enough from the previous labyrinth that both of them together were cool. And that then led to an underground labyrinth that was the third part of it. And I'm sitting there going, oh my god, this whole thing is just this one quest that I just kind of fell into, and I didn't really get to experience in the previous version of the game, Breath of the Wild, because they didn't do this kind of thing. This was a new challenge. I liked
Yeah.
that. I liked that
Yeah.
a lot, and I thought that like those moments in the game were far more interesting to me than
Mhm.
go find a shrine and do a shrine again because I've already done that like 150 times so far.
Exactly. Yeah. And I like this. The shrine puzzles are simple, like
Yeah,
they always have been.
and
But they
so easy to defeat sometimes in stupid
yeah.
ways.
Yeah, but that's I think part of the brilliantness of the design of this game is that you can solve a shrine probably 100 different ways
Hmm.
depending on how your brain dissects it and puts it together,
Hmm.
because like it's so easy to like break a game and figure out ways to like cheese it and whatnot. So to be able to just solve a puzzle that like you might think is cheese, but no, that was someone's intended way to do it because I solved it this way. it,
Yep.
it just is very interesting, and I think they put a lot of thought and a lot of care into some of the design here. It took them 6 years to get this right,
Hmm.
and I feel that they got it right. And like I said, once the story concludes, I'll let you know if it's better or not. It's up there. It's close. It's very close. I like the fuse aspect of the weapons. I think they took one of the more boring and mundane things from Breath of the Wild of the weapon durability, breakage, and whatnot, and made it interesting. With now you can find your decayed weapons on the surface, but underneath in the depths, depending on how you've progressed in the game, you can find pure weapons that are
Hmm.
not decayed, that can have some extra durability and strength to them, which I think is pretty cool. Definitely want to mark those locations on your maps to come back to, because they will respawn every blood moon.
Nice,
Very,
nice.
very, very important.
I didn't know
Um,
that. That's something I will do. Yeah, no,
yeah.
there was it's that aspect of the game is cool. The powers. I think
Mhm.
Nintendo did a good job, at least for two of the three, of improving and changing out the powers for something new. I lamented not having some of the powers of the original game when I was playing this one, but
Yeah.
like I've played this one long enough now that I don't actually remember the powers from the first game anymore. They don't like cause me to be like, man, I really want this back now. You know?
Yeah. My
Um,
biggest critique early on was the non-infinite bomb thing. The infinite
yeah,
bombs at Breath of the Wild was amazing, but I
it was.
mean, you were just like I remember talking to you, and you were like, "What? I got a whole bunch of bomb flowers that I found. I'm fine." And I was like, "I'm running out of bombs, and now I have over 100, and there's doesn't seem to always ever be a problem." So
See,
you were
yeah,
right. I was
I have 46 of them on me, and I'm not even using them. I will say this is unrelated to what I was about to say though. But the infinite item glitch, which I still have on my console because I've never connected my console to
Oh,
your internet. Um,
brilliant.
don't do it with bombs. Anyone who wants to try that, you have to put items in your hand while you're in your hand glider, and then drop
Uh,
them. But if you drop bombs, they explode.
yeah.
So I killed myself. That was hilarious. I'm like, that's what I get for being a dirty cheater. Um,
Pro tip right there.
right? Exactly. No, pro tip is don't let the game patch itself if you want to do infinite items.
Yeah,
Um,
that's it.
and you know what? Honestly, the economy of the game is stupid. They shouldn't have patched it out. Who cares if someone gets a bunch of diamonds? The game is hard, and buying things is crap. Just let people
Yeah.
do what they want.
They, they
Yeah.
definitely made it harder here
Yes.
to get items and such. I remember in Breath of the Wild, I put well over 300 hours into that game. I knew
Uh-huh.
where my Endura carrots were, where my where my Endura shrooms were, where the Hardy had my farming route that I took every blood moon. 30, 40, 50 minutes, whatever I did, I went around, I collected all my items, and I had just an infinite supply of anything I wanted. That is not as easy this time around. There is a good Endura carrot spot where you can find 8 of them every blood moon, which is really nice, which they're very handy. But there's not a whole lot of like just random mushrooms laying around like they had in the
Yeah.
other game, which was frustrating at first. But then I discovered just get on your horse and ride around the tundra region and kill moose and bears, and you have infinite meat, which is definitely good.
And I have a ton, but I haven't been doing dungeons, so I haven't like
Mm,
sat there and like cooked a bunch of dishes yet. I've just been
mm,
doing shrines to. I built up my entire stamina bar, and then I'm
yep.
gonna build up my heart bar to a point where I'm like, well, I'm not getting killed by one dude hitting me with a stick, which still happens, and I'm really irritated by that. But
Yeah.
once I get to that point, it's gonna be great. But yeah, no,
Mm,
the powers I think 2 of the 3 are cool. I like Ultra Hand because it's not
mm,
just move an item around like it was in the first game with the magnesis, but
right.
now it's like you can stick stuff together and make really dumb giant vehicles and planks and whatever. There was one dungeon or one shrine. There was one shrine where I was supposed to clearly grab a raft and float down the water of the raft, and then I would like guide my raft over to where it was supposed to go, hit a switch, and then guide further to get away. And I was just like, yeah, I'm not feeling this. So I just stuck every single plank and concrete thing that the shrine gave me. I
Yeah.
dragged stuff from the start of the shrine all the way to the end of the shrine. That you weren't, you're not supposed to because they're just like, we'll just give you more. Why drag this with you? No, I dragged it all there. And I built a bridge across the entire thing because I'm like, I'm not sailing. Screw that noise. Maybe it took me longer, but I got to do it my way and I wasn't irritated by it,
Yeah, I know the exact shrine you're talking about. I know the exact bridge you built because I did something very similar.
See? See?
Because like and that again that is not the intended solve
No,
of the puzzle,
but it
but it
worked.
works.
It worked. It was great. And I love the
Uh,
fusing. The fusing is when I first started the game, I'm like, I'm not going to use this. Who cares about fusing? But then you realize the bonuses that it can get on like some of the
yeah,
damage, and you're like, oh, this is stupid. So that triple labyrinth I did. The bottom labyrinth has a mechanical golem block creature in it. There's a few of these wandering around.
yeah,
You're going to see
the
them when they're exploring.
constructs,
The
the
constructs,
constructs.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this one is a forced battle if you want to fight the clear labyrinth. Other ones you
Mhm,
can avoid and just steal their item you need or do whatever. But this one, if you want to clear the labyrinth, you have to fight the thing. And I was
mhm,
actually like, I used the hallways to get around him, and I like stealthed him and stuff, and it was great. It was a great fight. I loved that fight. And
mhm,
like the combat in this game is not always great, but that one was. When you
mhm.
killed him, you get like his geary heart. And
Yeah,
I fused that to a broadsword I found in the depths, and it took my
mhm,
broadsword from a 12 damage to a 57. And I'm like,
yeah,
oh my god, this is my boss killer now. This is great. Um,
yeah.
like moments
I
like that is fantastic. Just finding weird shit to attach to your weapons and be like, well, this thing now does all kinds of damage. I love this.
Yeah, I've been, I've been going Lionel hunting to
Uh huh.
upgrade some of my armor, and I have watching a few YouTubers do some videos. I have a weapon that has 174 damage, and
Jesus.
all you do to make sure you don't break it, because it is one of those critical damage weapons,
Yeah.
because it's a Royal Claymore which will double in damage as it gets close to breaking. But
Jesus.
as long as you mount the Lionel and just hit him in the back of the head, it doesn't take away any weapon durability. So you can just
Nice.
keep wailing away at them and just taking their health away. It just melts Lionels in seconds, which is great.
That's
Um,
love that.
my
That's so cool.
my favorite new ability in the game that I've discovered, well, not discovered, but that I've discovered is my favorite is Ascend.
You like that one? I thought that
Oh
one was
my
kind
god!
of weak.
You know what? It's weak till you do it to solve some really interesting things. Like next time you come across a stone talus, just ascend through it. instead of
Okay.
trying to climb it.
Oh,
You can go right through it up to the top and just wail away at their soft spot, and you can use Ascend just to get yourself out of some really interesting locations where you feel like you're stuck.
I have gotten myself trapped more than once. I'm sitting there going, "Oh, I'm supposed to ascend here. That's what they want me to do." Okay,
Yep,
I
yep.
see.
Once I discovered how useful it was, it has quickly become one of my favorite abilities, and it kind of, in a way, replaced Rivali's Gale from the
Hmm.
Breath of the Wild,
Hmm.
because you don't have that upward trajectory now to get
Yeah,
you to
which I'm
go
sad
places.
about.
A little bit, but
Yeah.
like Ascend will have ways. If you have a roof over your head, you can get through it, and it can get all the way up. You can literally go through mountains in the Hebrew region if you just hit the right spot of it, and just go from the bottom in a cave all the way up to the top using Ascend. It's pretty wild how far you can go using this ability, and
Oh yeah.
the way I use it to kill Taluses is just so satisfying.
Yeah, no, I've I haven't used as much as you have. It feels to me like the Cryonis from the first game, which is like you
Yeah,
get what you're
yeah.
going for, but it's very limited in its application.
Very few usabilities for
Oh
Cryonis.
my
Yeah,
god,
it had
Cryonis is
its
dumb.
little. It had its shrines here or there where you needed to
Hmm.
make the ice blocks. It had this places here and there where you had to traverse across a thing where they maybe took your paraglider away, or it was really cold water that could kill you if you jumped in
Yep.
it.
Yep.
But Cryonis was weak. Ascend felt weak till I started using it in other aspects, and then I really started to become a fan of it. I'm
That's
very interested to see how people break recall, pretty soon, because
yeah.
recall
It's
feels
interesting.
to it feels weak initially.
Hmm.
But I mean, the fact you can rewind time for about 20 seconds inherently is extremely powerful in just
Yeah.
any game you can possibly think of. So I once more people have like played this and broken a little bit more, I really want to see what people can use to come up with to using recall, because I got a fun recall story after I let you get your next thought in,
Okay. Yeah. No,
that I use to solve a try.
I was gonna say I did it too, and I didn't mean to do it by accident. There's a for me there's a ball and gear puzzle in something,
Hmm.
and I did like I'm like maybe I couldn't figure out what it was because it was like it's two balls come out and you're supposed to bounce one ball against the other and do something
Right,
else,
right,
and
right.
I
Mhm.
couldn't figure out what the hell I was supposed to do because they weren't lining up right. So I did recall on one of them, and it just kind of accidentally worked,
Yeah,
and
yeah, it just bumps the other one. Yep.
yeah, it bumps the other one, but then it was like there was a later one, like in I think a different shrine where there was like a gear you were supposed to use that had the ball, and I'm like, well, maybe if I roll it this way, and it didn't work, but then the gear went further than it was supposed to do the recall, like further than I actually had it originally go, and suddenly it just kind of threw the ball where it was supposed to go. I'm like, well, I'm gonna take it because that worked.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. When I was in Traverse, I don't know how much story you've done, but when I was going through one of the temples, right?
uh-huh.
There's a spot where you got to build a bridge. You're several layers up in the temple, and it's a pretty far drop down. You have an array of stone platforms to build a bridge to go from one side to the other. And I dropped the bridge down below,
Oof.
very very far, and there's no other way to get across. But if
Oh,
you use, I was able to use recall to grab the bridge all the way down at the bottom and bring it
nice,
all the way back up to where I was and lay it back
nice.
out properly. I mean, there's definitely some really good
Uh huh.
uses for this. I'm excited to see how players smarter than me figure out ways to do it, because I'm very basic with it, but it definitely has some tremendous potential.
Well, and recall has power to it that you don't get from the other powers. It does stop time while you're trying to figure out what you're going to recall.
Yep.
Everything just stops, and you can be like, okay, I can take a moment to think. But
Hmm.
the other thing that it does is it has no range to it. Like it's unlimited range in comparison
Yep.
to like Ultra Hand or something where you have to be within a certain distance, or like
Yep.
Ascend where you have to be within a certain height or something.
Yep.
No, it's just like, oh, you have an item out there that you can see. Well, you can recall it and bring it back to you. It's just there.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
maybe gave me the idea of trying to bring that bridge that I built back up, because I was like, well, I can see it. Can I
Yep.
grab it? And
Grab it. Yeah.
sure enough, you can. If you can see it, you can get it. So it's definitely got some really interesting aspects of use,
Mhm.
I think. Not as useful in just traditional rolling through the
Games.
game,
Yeah.
that like obviously that fuses or ultra hand to build
Yeah.
your contraptions and even ascend to a degree. But I think there's a lot of potential and use for it,
Yeah.
if you can figure out. And maybe as you progress in the game and you get your fifth stage, I think it's probably going to be the stage of time. I'm just guessing because of what the other powers are. Maybe you get an upgrade to it that kind of makes you do some other things, which would be neat. But until then, I'm hopeful that it's going to improve. But it's definitely pretty cool to see.
Yeah. I'm definitely not that far in. I'm trying to do shrine tracking, and there was one shrine that's like up a waterfall that you have to swim up, and I'm like, okay, how do I get this? So I started exploring the Zora region. I ended up starting the plot to get to that temple. But then I got the Zora armor. I'm like, okay, deuces, bro. I'll be back later. It's fine. You wait at the temple for me. I'll be here in like 80 hours. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Sidon's like, but where were you? Well, but you were gonna be here.
He's a video game character. He just won't care. He's just sitting there eating fish while his girlfriend's tending to the sludge. It's fine.
Oh my
Who
god,
cares?
Sidon is such a Chad.
I love the characters in the game, but I'm sitting there going, you guys are going to be here waiting for me no matter how long I take, because that's just what you do. You're fine.
It's funny, dude. And I do like that, they did bring some of the other characters, like, Beetle, a fan favorite. But Sidon is back. Some people from the Goron region are back. People from the Gerudo region are back. Like, people you met in the other game. And they're back, and they have big roles in this one as well, which is pretty cool. Obviously, once you start doing more story, you'll see that. But like, as some of the characters that were, little pieces of the Breath of the Wild are now mainstays in this game, which is pretty cool to see. And the evolution of what this world has done in the time at the end of Breath of the Wild to the Tears of the Kingdom, what Zelda and Link have done to kind of help rebuild things, and how Hyrule is the way it is now, and the relationships that have, they've cultivated throughout that, the time off screen, I guess you'd say, to this game to where they are now. It's pretty neat, and I like it. The story's quite good. We'll see how it finishes again.
So, best character in the game for me is the dumbass sign guy. I love him.
Man, Addison.
I love wandering around and seeing this dude who just did not plan well at all, trying to hold up a sign, and then when you finally fix whatever it is that is wrong with this specific sign with the material around you, he does the worst fucking job finally stopping it up. I love him so much.
I'm a big fan. I have ones that are right next to water, which are very interesting to try to solve. But he's a nice little side quest wrinkle, and he gives you some good stuff. 20 rupees a pop is fine. That's a bundle of arrows or a meal. Yeah, the meal he gives you, and then he'll give you either an item or a sleepover ticket for a stable, which is fine. It's some good stuff. It's some good stuff.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
I like him.
Character I hate the most though is was it Kakariko or somewhere else? It was one of them. There's these ruins that this guy is protecting, and he's like, Zelda told me to protect this, and no matter, I'm just trying to get around your shit, and you keep interrupting me and putting me back in front of you. Leave me the hell alone. I don't care about your ruins.
I'm gonna do the ring ruins section of the game pretty soon. I know who you're talking about. I've seen him, and I'm not a fan either. My favorite character that's not a man is Beetle. Everybody loves Beetle. I mean, hey, wow! Like, who doesn't love Beetle? Just make sure if you're going to upgrade your barbarian armor and you have your bladed rhino beetles, don't go talk to Beetle to upgrade your armor, because he'll want to buy them.
That's fair. I don't have a lot of those yet. I haven't really been upgrading most of my stuff. I have to go do the fairies later. But I'm going to be honest with you, I beat the first game without even realizing the Great Fairies were there to upgrade your armor. So,
wow. Really impressive, yeah.
Yeah, I think I had the blue shirt and the Master Sword and some random equipment and just a bunch of food on me. And I'm just like, okay, let's just go do this.
I've been working on upgrading my gear, and then some of them, it's a bit of a grind. It definitely is. It definitely is.
Yeah, I did upgrade my armor after I beat the game. And it was like, some of them was like, we need to collect some dragon scales. I'm like, how do I do this? And I did it once, and I'm like, okay, this isn't worth it to me to do this again. I'm done.
Speaking of dragons, dude, I like how the dragons are back, but they did. There was a cheese way to farm stuff of the dragons in the Breath of the Wild, where you could farm Faroche just infinitely until your bow broke, which was great. They took that away here, which is slightly disappointing, but they did make it a little bit easier in a way to farm them, because now you can actually land on the dragons and stay there.
Nice.
If you try to do that in Breath of the Wild, you just kind of tumbled like Bobby McFerrin falling down the stairs, and it did not end very well for you. But now you can kind of sit on them and just wait and farm them. But there's like a 10-minute cooldown period every time you get a piece or whatever it is. So it's a little annoying, but at least you don't have to keep running around after them. You can stay with them. And all of my, as I complete the compendium, I have made all of my compendium pictures of dragons, Link taking a selfie on their nose. which my wife was a big fan of. I got Link doing like the little peace pose, and he's standing there on the nose of either Faroche or Nadra, and then the light dragon. Just all the dragon pictures are selfies with Link on their face. It's great.
Awesome. I love it. No, yeah, I've done enough of the plot to get into the glyphs and start getting the story of Zelda, which we're not going to go into here. Let's not spoil anything. Always spoiled a lot. But like it kind of confirms what you and I were talking about in the previous podcast, while not doing the exact plot line that I thought we were going to get.
Hmm.
Um, but it's an interesting story enough for what it is. Like end of the day though, I think we're back to what I was talking about before. There's a lot of fun, weird things to do in the game,
Hmm.
but a lot of it just feels like Breath of the Wild plus a little extra, and
Yeah.
that's what this game is. It's Breath of the Wild plus a little extra. I've played Breath of the Wild. I love Breath of the Wild. This game
Hmm.
is fun. I'm gonna put some hours into it, but I think when I finally get done with it, I'm just gonna kind of be done with it.
It's gonna all come down to like how the story ends, because Breath of the Wild has even some replayability, which is the mechanics they introduced,
Uh huh.
all the cool things that Breath of the Wild actually was your first like true open world Zelda game. It was my first 3D Zelda. I didn't have a 64,
Mm,
so I didn't get to play Ocarina or Majora's Mask or any of that. I didn't have a Wii U, so I didn't get to play Skyward Sword. This is what my first 3D Zelda was, Breath of the Wild, and I
great one.
love it to pieces. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Um, this game has improved a lot of things Breath of the Wild has done, and you can feel that in the care they put into it. But the story is still just a continuation of a really good story already.
Yeah.
How are you going to tie that together to make this better is something I'm anxious to see.
I'm curious about that. So here's the thing with the Zelda series, and I know I touched upon this in a podcast that I did with Josh a while back, but this is my issue with the Zelda series, and what I've played of this game, as good as it is starting to worry me about this. So you have the original Zelda, and a few of the games that come out after, up until Ocarina, iterate, in some ways evolve decently, but eventually just start to feel like iterations of it. Like, Link to the Past is a fantastic fucking game, and it takes
Mm-hmm.
everything that was Zelda 1 and improves it in every meaningful way, and I love
Right.
it. But then every top down Zelda to come after that is Link to the Past, just a little bit different. And at a
Yeah.
certain point, I got kind of tired of it, except for Four Swords Adventures, because that game is dumb fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
they did Ocarina, and then Ocarina was okay for what it was. It didn't hook me the way Link to the Past did, but I could see why people love it.
Hmm.
And then when they did the next game, Majora's Mask, it was Ocarina, which by
Yeah.
design it was built on it. But then every game to come out since then, up to a point, was just Ocarina again, with a
Hmm.
little something different. And at a certain point, I'm like, I've played this game. I'm bored of this game. So when Breath of
Yeah.
the Wild came out, it was great. But now we're in Tears of the Kingdom, which is kind of Breath of the Wild, but a little extra. And I'm like, okay, I'll give it to you this time, guys. But if you do this to me again in the next game, I'm going to start getting bored again, because there's only so many times I can explore this world and do the same shrine hunts over and over again, you know?
Yeah, I think what makes that slightly tolerable in a way for this
For
particular
this one.
instinct is the fact that it's an actual continuation of the story from the other
Mhm.
game. Like, yes, Majora's Mask is an extension and continuation of Ocarina, but is it? I mean, is it?
Yeah.
Yes, it is to the fans, and it
Yeah.
is, canon, I guess. But it's not truly a sequel. This is the first time Zelda gave us an actual true sequel to a previous game in almost the 40-year history of the franchise,
Hmm.
which I think is super cool. And I really am. I feel a connection in a way to these characters, because like this isn't the Link you grew up with. I mean,
It's his
the
own guy.
hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a different hero than Link to the Past. This is a different hero than the original Zelda. They're all part of the same universe, and they're all part of, but the hero and the princess are not always the same person, which is, its own fun little thing that they do throughout the franchise and whatnot. But these particular Link and this particular Zelda are very compelling to me, even
Hmm.
though Link doesn't speak, and like, that's kind of his thing, I guess.
Hmm.
Zelda talks for him. But I like this Link a lot. I think he's got a lot of really good things going for him, and I think he's one of the stronger Links in weapons and gear wise as well,
Hmm.
compared to some of the other ones. You got a lot of really cool tools to use in this game.
When the next Zelda inevitably comes out on the Switch too, which whatever they actually end up calling that console is going to happen sooner or later, and there will
Right,
be a
right.
Zelda on it eventually, because this thing sells systems.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
when that comes out, I'm gonna want more than another iteration on this world. I'm gonna want something that helps to evolve the franchise again. I need something more than what we've got.
Right. I have hopes that we get something, with the care and thought that they put into this game and
Hmm.
evolved and better. And I think we will. They
Yeah.
take a lot of time. They've given a lot more care to the Zelda franchise and the Metroid franchise over the years, which
Uh,
is sad. Which is
uh,
sad.
I know.
Still waiting on Prime 4, guys, in case you're
Come
out
on,
there.
Retro, you can do it. Come on.
But I think that if there was a franchise for the Nintendo that's going to get the care and the love and the evolution of a franchise that's not Mario, it is going to be Zelda. So I think you have some pretty high hopes there, but I think they will come to reality when the next system comes out, because like you said, this sells. It sells 10 million copies in 3 days. It sells.
I refuse to buy another Zelda game after Twilight Princess, because I tried to get into Wind Waker and the Forest Dungeon, lost me, and it just felt like Ocarina. And then I did Twilight Princess, and I got to the wagon chase, and oh my god, I hated that so bad. I just couldn't do it. And then like Skyward Sword came out, and I didn't even bother. I'm like, I already know I've played this game. I do not care anymore. So I was perfectly content not to buy another Zelda game until they did something new. They did something new. I love that. I have bought both of these games. Nintendo has my support on this. Breath of the Wild 3 needs to not be the same game. So
yeah,
it can be the same characters. It can be an evolution of the world, but they really need to do more than just slapping some new powers and different shrines on the same game.
Yeah, and I think that they'll get that, and who knows, maybe this is the end of the story here, and we don't get a Breath of the Wild 3, and we have a new Zelda in another 4 or 5 years. Who knows? But I think you're right. I think you can't just keep
doing this.
Throw a sticker on it and say, hey, take this baby out for a spin, and you're like, this is a lot of the same here. And I spent a lot of money on this. They've done enough new with this game where I haven't felt that way. So I'll give them, I don't want to say a pass, but I'll give them credit that this is not what the fears are not true and realize with this game.
If there's enough here, I'm crediting them as well. I'm seeing a lot of samey stuff, but then I have this thing where when a game starts presenting too much to me, I start to zone out.
Yeah.
I played through Yoshi's Island, but I only played through the bare minimum of that game, because they're like, oh, you can also go collect all the red coins and find all the flowers and do all the secret exits. And I'm like, but do I have to? I can't. I can't spend another 60 hours in this game that I've already played once, because I just don't care. And that's the barrier we're getting up to. You can explore all the shrines and go to all the upper islands and collect all these weird pieces of wisdom and do all the light shrines on the underside and light up the whole world and find new ways to do all the great fairies and do all these temples. And I'm like, my God, you've dumped too much on me. Your world is great. It's fantastic. It's huge. I love that. But you've hit a point where I'm starting to I'm getting overloaded.
Yeah, it can definitely be a lot, and it feels vast, like we said. The world is more than double in size compared to Breath of the Wild was, because you have the whole Hyrule surface, sure, and then you have the whole entire depths, which is the entire expanse of the surface just underneath it. Thankfully, the Sky Islands, aside from the Great Sky Island in the middle, are much smaller than I thought they would be, because if they were, even just say if they were a quarter of the size of the regular map, I would feel tremendously overwhelmed with how much you can explore.
They're just little tastes.
They're little nuggets here and there. The Great Sky Island, was the tutorial, obviously, so it had to be bigger, and it was a lot of the Great Plateau redo, whatnot. But the rest of the sky that I've explored so far has been just little pieces here and there, little respites of story and traversal that have been quite nice.
It's fun. I like the game. I don't think I rated as highly as Breath of the Wild, because you can't, we were talking with our friends online, like Saracen. You can't play Breath of the Wild again. And this is for all that it's added new stuff. This is Breath of the Wild again. It's not just an expansion pack. I'm not dismissing it, but it is Breath of the Wild again. It's a sequel. It's set in the same world. It has the same characters. It has a lot of the same mechanics. It is Breath of the Wild again. But you can't do that game again, and the same verve I had for it the first time is definitely lessened this time around. I'm enjoying what I have of the game. I don't think I'll put as much time into it, and I think at the end of the day, I'm gonna feel like, okay, I've done this game, and I appreciate everything you put into Nintendo, but please don't give me Breath of the Wild again after this.
I think that's a fair point, and we'll see what they decide to do at the end of this, when this is all finished and done. The story, Final Fantasy as well. So there's a lot of interesting not continuations. Final Fantasy 1 to 2 is not no continuation. There's very few Final Fantasies that have a continuation of story. So the first time we get this here in a Zelda, and I'm giving them just a little bit of a little credit, because you get attached to these characters, and you want to see how this finishes, and provided you can tie it up in a nice little bow and not drop the ball, I think it can be successful. And there's enough here to keep me involved. But I hear what you're saying. With 300 plus hours in Breath of the Wild, I'm gonna put that into this game too. just because that's how I play these games.
I get you. No, it's fine.
But to your point, like if I just wanted to like get done with the story and be done and just okay, I've played this already. Let's move on to the next thing. I get it. I totally do.
Yeah, and I think you raise a valid point there. So for Final Fantasy IV, you have you have Interlude and the After Years, which kind of play like Final Fantasy IV. For Final Fantasy X, you have 10-2, which yes, it has different mechanics to it, but it doesn't step so far away from the first game that you don't understand what you're doing. You have Final Fantasy 13 and its 2 sequels that iterate and continue its own concepts there. Like I get like those are the kinds of games where you expect a direct sequel to play similarly. And that is a fair point. This is a direct sequel. If it played too differently, it wouldn't feel like the same world. That's
right.
But even if they continue the story in a third game, I think like you can keep the open world, you can keep some of the destructive environments, you can keep some of the other stuff. But I think like that whole idea of you have to explore the shrines again, maybe like I appreciate the shrines over just going and finding heart pieces. The heart pieces got irritating after a while. You need full heart containers. Well, now you need 4 heart pieces to get a full heart. Well, now it's 5. What is it going to be, like 20 on the next one? No, like, I appreciate that the shrines are basically, do the shrines, you can use the shrines to power up a couple different things. And you know what you've gotten. You can mark, the shrines are marked on your map. You never have to worry that you missed a heart container, you know? Like, I get it. Like, I appreciate that. I think that's a good evolution of it. But maybe find a different way instead of just more little shrines. And I think that's the big thing for me is like so many of the mechanics carried over, the shrines, the great fairies, the other things that you'd expect to in a direct sequel. But you can only hit that well so many times.
Yeah, I think if they do decide they want to continue this story and say it doesn't end here, I'm not sure how it ends. But say it doesn't, and there is going to be a third game, you have to do something different. To your point, you can't just do this over again. Like you're getting a bit of a pass, I think, Nintendo, that this is the same game, bigger, but it's the same.
Yeah.
You can't just explore Hyrule for a third time and just be like, then you're going to really start feeling like you said, okay, I've done this before. How do I just finish and move on and just get done? And I think that if you just decide that, I mean, maybe there's other kingdoms out there they haven't explored. They took to the seas in Wind Waker. Maybe they do that again, or maybe there's stuff in the sky they could do because that's what's going on above Hyrule this time around. But to your point, if they do a third one, it has to have something different.
Has to be substantially different in a few key ways, so that even if you still do the overworld nonlinear experience, you feel like you're finally getting something new out of it.
Yep, so, exactly.
Tears of the Kingdom is a beautiful game. It's really well constructed. It does bear that little mark of Nintendo going, we were going to make this an expansion pack, but it got too big and we decided to make a whole new game. It does bear that. It has those marks on it, and I think that's what I'm bumping up against. But it's still a very finely constructed game with a lot of cool stuff in it that does more than the first game. So you're right, I give a pass to this one because they did it. I may not play it as long, but I give a pass to it in general, and I think, especially if you didn't play the first one, this game is going to rock your fucking socks off. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's a beautiful game. It's just well crafted. It's just a good story. There's a lot of just really good tech in there. If it's worth a play, absolutely.
It proves Nintendo knows what the hell they're doing, and you just can't dismiss their games because they're phenomenal at what they do. They just are. They know how to find the fun.
Yeah, and they do, and they found out a way to have charge $70 for a game for the first time and not have me feel so terrible about it.
No one has bitched about the price, not once. They're all like, unless they're like, well, I'm not going to pay that much for an expansion pack, which is just reductive. Anyone who's like, I'm buying a full game, but it's this game, I feel fine with that.
Yeah, this game it has enough there to warrant the price, and it was definitely daunting when I saw it was $70. I'm like, my God, what are you doing, Nintendo? But they came through this time. Let's hope they can continue that. And then to your point, I think we both have high hopes that they can.
Yeah, I'm sure. So we'll let this one go and suggest it to people who want, especially who haven't played the first one, but also to those who really just want to get more of Breath of the Wild. And then when they announce the next one in like 5 years, we can both sit there going,
Right. And once we both finish the story here, we can come back and give some final thoughts and see how things go. So we'll finish it up and whatnot.
Yeah, here we go. This has been Not So Live from Asteroid G, still lost somewhere in the overworld of Hyrule. I'm your host, Mike Finkelstein. With me in the booth was...
The other Mike, the horror and video game guy.
and we will see you guys next time.